Let me start with Ambassador D.K Osei. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Ambassador. I really appreciate your time. Good evening.
Bernard, thanks for having me.
I had to revisit your book that you published. Chapter 11 spoke about your few years in Guinea.
Yes.
So I can imagine Guinea is one of the countries close to your heart. Have you been following the developments there? What was your reaction when you heard of what happened on Sunday?
You know, I haven't slept since Sunday morning.
Since Sunday morning?
I haven't slept since Sunday morning. You know, I was woken up at 8:15, and I really have been following events so very closely. You can understand, I haven't worked in Guinea for several years, and I have friends all over the place from both sides. And I am distraught. I'm very concerned about the future of the country, which is one of the countries I call my second home. I'm concerned about what's going to happen to the people of Guinea and all my friends who are on all sides of the equation. So, Bernard, I'm very concerned about Guinea.
Did this come to you as a surprise?
Not really. Not really. I've always had the view that given the nature of the attempts made to change the constitution and the very dynamic role that the National Council for the Defense of the Constitution have played in the last 2.5 years, and the sacrifices which had occurred, it would not have surprised me that this would happen. And in fact, discussions have been held about this eventuality. And in two months ago, when I was in Conakry, I spoke to the president about the possibility of this happening.
Wow, just 2 months ago?
Yes.
He obviously didn't listen to you.
You know, President Conde and I had been friends for a long time. He was president of what we call the FIAMF, a structure built by President Nkrumah to be a meeting place for radical Francophone students in Paris. And he's been my friends all the time that I was a diplomat in Conakry. So I was deeply concerned, and we've had discussions about the future of Guinea, about democracy in West Africa, about political economy of Guinea, and the utilization of Guinea's abundant natural resources for the development of the country. So we've had discussions, but we've had discussions in Accra recently when he visited Accra.
So how did such a respected human rights activist lecturer become almost a dictator in the sense of tampering with the constitution, getting a third term, which a lot of people thought he shouldn't have had? From the readings, he appears to be, the best hope for Guinea for many years. Is it true that he's turned around, or are we misunderstanding the man?
You know, Bernard.
Yeah, go ahead, I can hear you clearly.
I'm just as surprised as many people are. You know, Alpha was one of the most democratic persons I'd ever known. One of the most committed Pan-Africanists that I'd met in my life. Now, in 2017, we had a long discussion about this matter. And his response was very surprising to me. One of the things he said to me was that since I'd never stood for an election, I could not give him a lecture about democracy. And I was very surprised about his attempts at wanting a change in the constitution. And I'm not the only one who tried to speak to him about this. I mean, all his friends tried to speak to him about this. And his responses were very un-alpha-like. So I must say that I was very surprised about the changes, and I was very surprised about the way even he ran his presidency. You know, last time I was there, I couldn't believe that it took me about 7 different security checkpoints to be able to see to him, to be able to see him. So I asked him, look, don't you feel like you are in prison? Because you are not like that. He is very open, very affable, and very pro-Ghana person. You know, he used to visit Ghana all the time in the past. So I asked him, he said, no. I mean, the duties of the president require that. It was a change that I couldn't quite understand. But I suppose that when you haven't had the kind of power that President Conde had, you cannot understand.
Is it a case of becoming a carbon copy of the man you so derided? Because Lansana Conte was quite fierce from what we read about him, and you were a diplomat in his time. So that maybe in coming into the position, maybe explain to us the fault lines in Guinea. That will probably help us. Is it just a question of ethnic issues? What are the key issues which will probably transform your friend from a Democrat into this type of image?
I think the fault lines.
Hello, are you there? Yes, I'm hearing
yeah,
you. Go ahead.
The fault lines in Guinea are not totally different from the fault lines in most African countries. But in Guinea, can you hear me better?
Yes, you are loud and clear. Go ahead.
In Guinea, the fault lines become more pronounced because of the quality of the natural resources that are available in Guinea and the disillusions that the population has about politicians' inability to transform the lives of the average Guinean. You know, there's a French geologist who calls Guinea a geological scandal.
Oh.
Because of the quality of, I mean, we talk about having bauxite in Ghana, it's a joke. We talk about having iron or gold. If you look at the quantities we're talking about in Guinea, or the river bodies, etc., Guinea is a very rich country. Now, the difficulty they've also had is embedded in the political history of the country. You know, you talk about Secretary as a Pan-Africanist, but there were also fault lines developed there. From 58, when Secretary rejected de Gaulle's call, the French reaction generated a certain reaction in the average Guinean, but also led Secretary to introduce what many would consider to be undemocratic tendencies. And there's a prison which was called Camboiro, which hosted a lot of political opponents. So from that period, the traditions of opening up the political space took such a long time. You were saying that President Lansana Conte was very violent. I'm not sure about that. I think that I worked in Guinea when President Lansana Conte was president. His difficulty was that when he took over after the death of Secretary, he promised that he would return the country to civilian rule soon. Unfortunately, he didn't live up to his promise. But in terms of political suppression and denial of human rights, I'm not sure that he was worse than Secretary or Alpha Condé. And during the period, he was one of the most open presidents you could deal with. He would drive to your house at 10 p.m. and sit with you and have dinner with you, for instance. I think his difficulty was that he didn't quite understand the major governance issues of the country. He was comfortable being president. He had the soldiers behind him, and he was just waiting till his death. So Sorry, Bernard.
Yes. Yeah, listen to you. Did they make a mistake in the referendum then? I mean, I'm reading something and I'm told, for example, that the literacy rate is about 40%. Guinea has one of the highest rates of child marriage.
Yes.
FGM is in the 97%. Infrastructure, I mean, colleague journalists who visited the country say they literally have to take their own water when they visit Guinea.
Yes.
So, and indeed, you wrote in your book yourself that when people are posted to Guinea, some of them resign from the foreign service because there's nothing there. So, I mean, could they? Did Sékou Touré make a mistake?
No, I disagree with you, Bernard. Sékou Touré took one of the boldest political decisions that any African president had taken then. But his ability to translate that political decision into improving the lives of the Guineans did not occur. And it's not for lack of resources. I mean, Ghana lent them a lot of money, but they didn't even need the resources given to them by Kwame Nkrumah. So it was not a mistake. In fact, if many of the African countries had followed suit and had run their countries well, maybe it wouldn't be where we are. You see, Sékou Touré was responding to the French, and the French systematically resorted to subverting the economy of Guinea. In fact, just before the death of Sékou Touré, there's evidence that the French government printed Guinean currency. And there's also evidence that there were, on a number of occasions, mercenaries were sent to attempt to assassinate Sékou Touré. In response to that, perhaps Sékou Touré's political responses may have been a bit harsh.
Wow. Let's talk about the sub-region now briefly before I come to Doc. So, as at least from August last year, there have been 4 coup attempts. 2 in Mali, I think both succeeded, and then 1 in Niger, which failed. If you add Chad, Idriss Deby, we are told, was killed in war. Some people thought he was assassinated. We are not sure. Then you have this, all from August last year till now. I mean, what is going on? Did you get the question?
No, you talked about instability in West Africa.
Yes.
I couldn't hear the
So my question is, what is going on?
Bernard, we should all be very concerned, because the indications of instability are clear all over the sub-region. And if you give me 2 minutes, let me just take you through it. In Nigeria, we haven't resolved the problem of Boko Haram. So there is a certain degree of instability. In Benin, the opposition is very angered about the manner in which the last presidential elections were held, which automatically made Talon the victor because of the new laws about who could stand elections as a presidential candidate or not. And because most of the opposition parties were denied the possibility for standing. You go to Burkina Faso, and a large portion of that territory is in the hands of extremist militants. You go to Côte d'Ivoire, and I love Côte d'Ivoire, but there is also an issue of the third term, which the opposition is contesting. And I'm not sure what's going to happen in Côte d'Ivoire. I mean, now we have Gbagbo back, Soro, it's in exile, and they think he's plotting to overthrow the government. And in recent times, there have been extremist attacks in Côte d'Ivoire. You go to Guinea, you know what's happening in Guinea now. You go to Guinea-Bissau, you know what's happening in Guinea-Bissau now. In Senegal, you know about Khalifa Sall, the mayor who was imprisoned, and Karim Wade, and so on and so forth. So for the first time, the opposition in Senegal think that there may be a possibility of a slip in democracy in Senegal. You go to Mali and Niger, which are next door, and you know what's happening in both countries. So for anybody in the sub-region to think that this sub-region is very stable, we are in serious disillusionment. You cannot count beyond Cape Verde, Ghana, too many of them where you can predict the future. I didn't mention Togo intentionally because you know what's happening in Togo. So as a sub-region, the indicators of instability are very highly pronounced. And this is where I think that ECOWAS and the AU have a major role to play in the area of preventive diplomacy. We know where the fault lines are. We know what can be done to prevent instability occurring in a number of these countries. This is the time for the leaders of the sub-region and the continent to take initiatives of a preventive nature to improve the political situation in the sub-region. I am very concerned, and I hope that you all are.
On that grim note, I'll take a short break. Please stay with me. This is the point of view. Very sober thoughts coming from Ambassador D.K Osei, retired diplomat, vast experience. He has a program coming up this week. I'll tell you about that. He has a book as well. I'll tell you about. When I come back, I'll speak to Dr. Abdul Jalilu Ateku, and I hope Ambassador will stay with me as well. We're trying to understand the situation in Guinea and what it means for us in West Africa. Earlier on, we spoke to Thieno Diallo, who's with the Ministry of Information of Guinea. We'll be right back.